Good day, Metcalfe Public School, and welcome to the MPS Daily News. Today is Tuesday, November 3rd. I know I made a mistake yesterday and said November 1st, but it was actually November 2nd. Bonjour, Metcalfe, et bienvenue aux nouvelles MPS. Aujourd'hui, c'est mardi, le 3e novembre. Yesterday, we learned a little bit about the Mi'kmaq First Nation. The plan was to continue for this week. However, we're going to alter the plan as we mark Treaties Week. First Nations treaties. Beginning in the early 1600s, the British Crown, later what we know as the Government of Canada, entered into a series of treaties with Indigenous nations of Canada. The treaties were intended as formal agreements to encourage peaceful relations and to specify promises, obligations, and benefits for both parties. Indigenous peoples wanted to protect their traditional lands, resources, and way of life while ensuring peace and friendship, and eventually receiving support as they shifted to a new reality in the mid-19th century. Today, everyone agrees First Nations peoples agreed to share some of their land and resources in return for material support. But the terms of this exchange would ultimately be understood differently by the parties involved. The difference in interpretation is rooted in differing worldviews with distinct concepts of land ownership. Now we're going to hear a little bit about why we are all treaties people.
The Anishinaabe, or Anishinaabeg, comprise of one of the oldest nations in North America, or Turtle Island. More than 1,000 years ago, the Anishinaabe migrated from the Atlantic coast to the center of the continent, and their communities of Ojibwa, Chippewa, Odawa, Mississauga, Potawatomi, Algonquin, and Delaware peoples populated and controlled the Great Lakes Basin by the late 1600s. The Anishinaabe, or Anishinaabeg, were not merely nomadic hunter-gatherers as they are often described by archaeologists and other academics. They had a sophisticated society with their own belief systems, community laws, and code of moral principles. They believed in one creator, the Great Spirit, or Chi-Manitou, and they believed that every living thing has a spirit and should be treated with respect. The Anishinaabeg established a framework of government given to them by the Creator and passed down in each family over generations, called a dotem or clan system. Children inherited their father's dotem, an animal or bird that defined their responsibilities within their community. For example, Crane clan people were groomed to be chiefs and to possess the patience exhibited by that bird when fishing. There were 7 original Anishinaabeg clans. The people were knowledgeable about their environment. Their teachings said the earth was round and moved around the sun as did other planets. They took only what they needed from Mother Earth to survive and offered something in return for everything they took. They made a sacred offering of tobacco, sema, to an animal who had given up its life for their food. They traded with other tribes for goods they did not have, or which were scarce in their territories. Sharing with others was the greatest virtue. There was no concept of property ownership or individual wealth. Hunters provided food for all lodges, and mothers helped one another raise their community's children. Among Anishinaabeg teachings was a prophecy forecasting the coming of white brothers from a distant land.
And that's where we're going to end for today. However, each day we're going to come back to this notion that we are all treaty people. As we begin to go through it, we begin to also strengthen that understanding that today and every day we will honor and thank the First Nations people of this country for allowing us to grow and learn on their land. Here at Metcalfe, we thank the Algonquin Nation for allowing us to learn and grow. Our announcements for today, the news for today, les nouvelles pour aujourd'hui. Yesterday, we started talking a little bit about understanding student dysregulation. Today, we're going to be talking about disengagement and our fight-flight response. Disengagement can be a problematic response when it comes to academics, but at least in the case of the math question, the threat is small and specific. Unfortunately, in modern society, most of the threats we face aren't nearly as simple and straightforward. For most of human evolution, our stress response has been a functional and often life-saving reaction necessary for survival. Historically, most threats to our well-being were discrete in nature. They were specific things like saber-toothed tigers and dangerous strangers. These were all threats that could be fairly readily identified, and options in regard to fight or flight were quite clear. In fact, most threats can be resolved by simply running away. We are species built for running, after all. But today, most of the threats we face aren't as clear, and most can't be solved by simply running away. For our students especially, the threats are even more intangible and all too often prolonged and powerful. Consider the student who has relocated from a war-torn country. The child must contend with trauma of living in daily danger, the loss related to leaving home, the stress of relocating to a new country and culture, and all the difficulties of adjusting to an entirely new school, including possible social and language challenges. These threats are all very real, sweeping and impossible to simply escape by running away. As a result, the fight or flight system remains altered and engaged, with no clear resolution in sight. What is supposed to be a temporary reaction to specific stress becomes a prolonged, dysfunctional, and even toxic way of being. If you ever end up coming down to see me in the office and we will talk a little bit about this notion of fight and flight, running away versus going at the problem. Okay? Weather, ice, and snow. We are now facing the prospect of snowy mornings and cold temperatures. Please dress for the weather. If this is a struggle, talk to someone about it. Maybe we can help. On mornings such as this, when we have a little dusting of snow, the pavement may be slippery. Take caution, as we may not always be able to get the grit down on the ground in time for the start of day. There are no birthday wishes for today. That's the announcements for today. Merci et bonne journée. Thanks, and have an outstanding day, Metcalf.